How's everybody doing? Yeah, how about we all do that? How about we all say woo woo? Yeah, there we go. We are beginning a new series, and it's just simply called Gospel Project Alaska. We're going to spend the next 3 weeks talking about this initiative that was launched 2 years ago. If you were not here at that time or didn't catch it in the video, this initiative is all about sharing the gospel with those in Alaska. Specifically, our goal is to share the gospel with every Alaskan by 2030. Whoop, whoop. That's pretty exciting, is it not? Yeah? Is that exciting? Share the gospel with every single Alaskan. To say that we did that, it would be pretty awesome. And to talk about knowing that the Lord will say, well done, my good and faithful servants. If we accomplish that, man, that would be so amazing. Now, before we get into the details of how we're going to do this, I first want to back up, and I want to share with you a shocking realization that I had about 1 year into my walk with Jesus. I guess you could say it started with an assumption pretty quickly in my walk with Christ, and then about a year into it, I had this shocking discovery. What was the assumption? What was the discovery? Let's back up with the assumption. For those of you who don't know my testimony, I did not grow up a Christian. I mean, I was that person that said I was a Christian, but doesn't really live like it. And I got saved back in 2014. I was in the Army, I was a medic, and I went to this church, McLean Bible. And at this church, I went to this camp as a volunteer for youth, which is crazy. But there I get saved, okay? And context at this church, they had just gone through a book called Multiply, okay? Multiply is written by David Platt and Francis Chan, and it's a book all about discipleship. How to make disciples, how to share the gospel with others, living out the Great Commission, Matthew 28:19-20. So this has kind of become baked into the culture of this church, discipleship evangelism, right? So when I get saved at that camp in January of 2014, I go to the church the next week and I tell a couple people about my decision to follow Jesus. And they say, great, you need a mentor who's going to disciple you. And I'm like, cool. I have no idea what that means. And they said, well, we do. So here we go. And they point to a guy named Brendan Blood. And Brendan Blood said, sure, I'll start discipling Preston. And it was awesome. Brendan, I'm telling you, was a great mentor. We would meet every Monday or Tuesday night. We'd go to a restaurant like Qdoba or something like that. He would tell me which books of the Bible to read because back then I had no idea what to do. He gave me verses to memorize. He held me accountable. We went through a book called The Measure of a Man, which talked about what a godly man is supposed to be. But one of the best things that Brendan did for me, which all of you guys should write this down, if you want to disciple somebody else, you know what the best thing you can do for them is? Actually live out your faith. If you live it out, that will impact someone else. And Brendan did this. Brendan specifically did this as it relates to sharing the gospel, okay? Brendan was a master, okay? So let me just tell you an insight to how Brendan was. We'd go to Qdoba, like I said. We'd be in line, and he would start talking to the people either in the front of us or behind us, which that's not weird for me. I'm a pretty talkative social guy, so that was normal. But Brendan had this amazing ability. Within 2 minutes, that conversation went from small talk to all of a sudden he's sharing his testimony, he's inviting them to church, or he's flat out sharing the gospel with them right there in that moment. And I was like, this guy's amazing. I want to be able to do that too. But it wasn't just Brendan. There was also a guy named Tony Kibik. Tony Kibik was a big, buff Filipino guy, and he wanted to be in the military like me, so whatever. Anyway, so me and Brendan started to connect because we both like to lift. He wanted to be in the military like I was, so we started to hang out, and Tony, he loved sharing the gospel, but he specifically loved tracts. Does anyone here like to use tracts or know what those are? If you know what a tract is, gospel tract, can you raise your hand? Okay, good amount of you do. I don't like tracts, but Tony liked tracts, okay? He specifically liked Ray Comfort Ministry tracts. And so what we would do, he would invite me. We would get some food together at the Tyson's Corner Mall. It's a pretty big mall in Northern Virginia. And then we would go pass out tracts to anyone who would let us. And if they would be willing, we would then share the gospel with them. Not only that, I would serve in this youth ministry, which I already told you I got saved as a volunteer. But this youth ministry, all the leaders in it, we're super passionate about sharing the gospel. I think of DJ and Jess Corky, that was his wife, and Chris Suarez was the junior high pastor, and Todd Peters, he was the senior high pastor. And when we would have our pre-service huddles, these guys every single week would say, listen, you have no idea who it is that you're going to share the gospel this week, and you're going to change their life. And they would hype us all. And we're like, yeah, and we'd run out of there to go share the gospel every single week. And not only that, not only was it like put on us as the youth group leaders to share the gospel, but we also try to empower the students to share the gospel. So much so, we partnered with a guy named Greg Stier. Many of you hopefully remember Greg Stier. He spoke at our church about a year ago, or maybe 2 years at this point. Time flies. But he oversees a ministry called Dare to Share. It's a nationwide, actually at this point, it's global youth ministry that the goal is to train high school students on how to share the gospel, and then you take them out to do it. So our church, literally within my first year, within first 2 months of being a Christian, I'm in this youth ministry, and we bring Greg Stier up, and we train all the high schoolers for the entire morning, and then we all say, let's go, and we go all around the town sharing the gospel all afternoon, okay? And not only that, the head pastor at the church, his name was Lon Solomon. Lon Solomon shared the gospel every single week. It didn't matter what he was preaching on, he would share the gospel, and most weeks he would share his testimony about how he got saved through a street preacher preaching the gospel at the college he went to in North Carolina. So, get this. I didn't grow up in church. I haven't been Christianized. I get saved as a 19-year-old in 2014, and within my first few months of being a Christian, that's what I'm surrounded by. So you know what my assumption was? I assumed sharing the gospel was what Christians do. I said, sharing the gospel, this is what we do. I mean, everybody does it. My mentor did, my friends did, my ministry leaders did, my pastor did. Everyone I knew shared the gospel all the time. So you know what I did? I became an evangelizing fool for Jesus. I already told you I went and shared the gospel with Tony at the mall. I told you I shared the gospel with the high schoolers that I was serving with. But not only that, I shared the gospel at work. I told you I was in the Army and I worked at a hospital. And it was really funny. People would say, hey, you can't share the gospel here. That's proselytizing. I'm like, what is proselytizing? Well, I'm sharing the gospel. And I said, I wish somebody would try to get me in trouble for sharing the gospel in the United States Army. I'll be on the news. I'll get a book deal. That'd be great. Please get on to me. So I started sharing the gospel with all my coworkers. And I got really good at making this happen. Here's a trick for all of you at work. You want to know how to do this? People love talking about themselves. So you know what you do? You start the conversation off. It's the beginning of the week. Hey, what'd you do this past weekend, Susie? Susie says, oh, well, I did this, right? And she just talks for 10, 15 minutes. And then finally, she finishes and she feels bad because she realizes she's been talking for 15 minutes and all you've done is, right? And guess what she's going to do? What about you, Preston? What'd you do this weekend? Thanks for asking, Susie. Susie, I was serving at my church and I did this and this and that. Hey, Susie, do you go to church anywhere? No, why not? How's your relationship with God? You're such a nice person. I would have thought for sure you had a relationship with God. Boom, end of the gospel. If it's the end of the week, same thing. Hey, what's your plans this weekend, Susie? And she's going to go on for 15 minutes, this. And then, hey, what's your plans? And you're going to say, oh, I'm going to go to church. Hey, do you go to church? I would just do this all the time, okay? Also, not only that, I started sharing the gospel with my family, okay? I would call my dad and try to share the gospel with him. When I went home on vacation, my papa had died that year, so I went home. I took my stepmom out to share the gospel with her, all three of my stepsisters. Anyone I could, I'd be sharing the gospel. I did this so much so that my dad finally, within so many months, on the phone said, son, you're my son, not my pastor. So stop talking to me about Jesus. So I share the gospel a lot with my family. I also would share the gospel at restaurants. We had this 5:30 p.m. service, and most young adults would go to it. So we would go to this restaurant. Many times it was Chili's or BJ's or whatever, Silver Diner. And we would have this giant table, 30, 40-something young adults at this table. And I would look up, I'd get up and say, hey, everyone, we're going to all go share the gospel with at least one person before our appetizer gets here. Let's go. And then I would just go and start sharing, and everyone's just sitting there, and I'm like, let's do it. And then I would just go do it. I would do this all the time. I even would share the gospel at Walmart. I think this actually was a selling point for Jacqueline when she decided she liked me. We were at Walmart, and they have, assets protection, or whatever, security people. That's not security. Anyways, there's this guy named Walter Reed, and we're walking out of Walmart, and I see him, And I'm like, yo, Walter Reed, how's it going? I start talking and whatever. We finished the conversation. We start heading in the car, and Jacqueline's like, how do you know him? I said, I don't. But he looked like he was bored one night, and I had a little bit of time, so I decided to share the gospel with Walter Reed. And she's like, wow. Anyways, moved on. It was great. I was sharing the gospel all the time because I assumed sharing the gospel is what Christians do. But you know what I realized about a year into my walk with Jesus? You know what shocking discovery I had about 1 year into following Jesus? My shocking realization was that most Christians do not share the gospel. Most Christians don't. I realized this when I told you I'd be at the restaurant or wherever in public with young adults, and I'd say, let's all go share the gospel with someone. And I would see the bewildered look on people's faces, like, what? We can't do that? Or I realized this when my Christian coworkers would be the ones who would discourage me from sharing the gospel with other coworkers that we knew weren't Christians. And they'd be like, oh, you can't do that. You shouldn't do that. I realized this when I would come be with the other young adults in the ministry and try to tell stories of the people I shared the gospel with that week and hoping to hear something back, and yet no one else had stories to tell. About a year into my walk with Jesus, I realized most Christians do not share the gospel. Church, would we all agree every Christian should share the gospel, yes or no? I mean, it literally is at the heart of following Jesus. The call to follow Jesus is a call to share the gospel. Matthew 4:19, think about at the very beginning of Jesus' ministry, he begins by saying, Matthew 4:19, follow me and I will make you fishers of men. You're following me, you're trying to reach other people. That's at the beginning. How about at the very end of his ministry, Matthew 28:19-20, Jesus says, go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I've commanded you. And behold, I'm with you always. So his first words to follow him include the idea of sharing the gospel. His final words about following him is going out, making disciples, sharing the gospel, teaching others of what it means to follow Jesus. So this idea of sharing the gospel is literally what Christians should do. Every Christian should share the gospel, but most Christians don't. And just so you know, this is not just a big C church problem, as in most churches in America. This is even true for us here in our church, Mountain City Church. Most of us here are not sharing the gospel. Right? I mean, some of you do. And for those of you that are, praise God, like keep it up. That is awesome. But most of us, if we're honest, we're not sharing the gospel. Definitely not consistently. And I think most of us, we don't share the gospel for a variety of reasons. I don't want anyone to feel bad. That's not the goal right now, but I think we do need to be honest with ourselves. If this is what it means to follow Jesus, where are we at right now? Why don't we share the gospel? I think when I think in my own life, the times that I don't share, and I think many of you could probably relate to, one reason is fear or embarrassment. Fear, embarrassment. Just this last week, for example, my wife and I, we go to the mall. We go to the mall, we go to the store, and we're checking out, and the line's forming. And by the way, whenever my family and I go out, it is quite the spectacle at this point, because I got 4 kids, 5 and under, and they're all girls. So guess what? When I'm walking around every time, oh, wow, 4 girls. You're going to try for a boy? Let's see. It's like, hi, my name's Preston. Don't ask me that. I'm still trying to recover from 4 girls, okay? I'm just kidding. Girl dad. But if you want to put on your prayer list to pray that I get a boy, I won't be upset with you for that. But no, seriously, everywhere we go, it's this whole thing every time. And I got the stroller, and Allie's in it, and then Kelly, Lily, Molly running around touching every single thing, no matter how many times we say, don't touch everything. They're doing that, and then we got people in front of us, people behind us. So we buy our stuff, and we're checking out, and people are, saying all their stuff. I'm trying to get them out, and all of a sudden, Lily says, wait, Dad, do we want to tell them about Jesus? And I'm like, no, Lily, please keep going. But then it gets worse. And then Lily's like, but Dad, we don't want them to go to hell, do we? I'm not joking, like loud like that. And I'm like, no, we don't, Lily, but please keep going. Like, I'm so embarrassed right now. So I, the guy talking about sharing the gospel, was not at all concerned about sharing the gospel in that moment. I was just embarrassed. And I bet many of you can relate as well. Also, I think another reason why sometimes I don't is I just get busy and distracted. I'm not focused on sharing the gospel. Again, another example from this week. Jacqueline and I were running some errands. We had someone watching the kids, so our time was limited. We go to Walmart, and they have the New Vision Bank in there. All of our bank accounts are merged, except for there's one from when she was younger that we're not merging. She said, we've been saying we need to make this happen. Let's do it real quickly before we go on with the errands. And I said, okay, no problem. And what we thought was going to be quick ends up taking forever. You guys know that, like, that's why I don't want to go to the bank. The bank just sucks, right? It just takes forever every time you go. And they start asking dumb questions. Hey, what do you want to do? We just want to, add Preston to the account. Sounds good. And they start asking ridiculous questions. For example, one of them was, Preston, what do you do for a living? What does that matter? Are you not going to add me to the account if I say I'm a janitor? If I say I'm a bus driver? If I say I'm in the army, are you now not going to add me to the account? And anyways, say I'm a pastor or whatever. And then they ask Jacqueline, who's already got the account, what her job is. What does that matter? And so we're getting frustrated. We start to get really short with our answers. And, you can just tell we're frustrated. Anyways, we finish the conversation. Finally, the account is made. And then we start to leave. And you know what I didn't do at all? I didn't care or think about sharing the gospel with that gentleman, even though he set me up perfectly to do so. What's your job? I'm a pastor. Hey, now that you know I'm a pastor, just want to know, what's your relationship with God like? He just set me up perfectly for it. But you know what I was not thinking about? That, sharing the gospel, because I had a to-do list I just wanted to do. And I bet many of you can relate to that as well. But even more than those reasons, I think most of us don't share the gospel. If I were to go around with a microphone, I bet you the most common answers we would get is people would say, we don't know how, and we have no plan to do it. We don't know how, and we have no plan to do so. And we all know, if you don't know how to do something, you're probably never going to do it, right? If you don't know how to do something, well, we can say this for sure. You're not going to do it consistently anyways. And also, if you don't plan to do something, well, then we all know how disastrous that is, or how successful that is to say I'm going to do something but don't make a plan. In fact, we all know this so well, I think I'm going to say a statement to you I know all of you will be able to finish, right? If you fail to plan, you plan to? Right. And so most of us, man, we don't share the gospel because we don't know how and we don't have a plan. So our goal, church, is we want to change that. Our hope in this series is for all of us to become better equipped to share the gospel. Our hope and our prayer is that by the time we're done with this series, everyone will know how to share the gospel and everyone will have a plan to share the gospel. Does that sound good to everyone in here? Yes or no? All right. So before I get into the how and the plan, I want to first address two groups of people, okay? Two groups of people. The first group of people I want to address is those who are apathetic towards the gospel. Most of you in here, I don't think you're apathetic. I think that you want to share the gospel, and I think you legit just don't because you don't know how, you don't have a plan. But I also recognize that there are probably some of you that do know how, and you could have a plan very easily, but you don't because you're just apathetic towards it. You just think, whatever. I'm not going to do that. I don't want to be uncomfortable. If that happens to be you, I just want to ask you to reconsider that position. And I mean that. Like, I bet you if that's your perspective, I'd be willing to bet your walk with Jesus is pretty boring. I bet you if your perspective is, I don't share the gospel, I bet you your life is pretty dull. At least spiritual life. And you know why I say that? You know one of the times that Jesus promises to be with us? We already read it. Matthew 28:19-20. You know what he says? After he says, go make disciples, you know what he says? He concludes with, I will be with you. You want to experience God's presence in your life? You want to do some fun things? You want to be the person that has cool stories to share with others about reaching others for Jesus? Then go start telling people the gospel and you will experience the presence of God. Yes, God is omnipresent and He's with us always, but I know everyone in here knows there's times you experience Him more than you do at other times. And I promise you, if you will just start sharing the gospel consistently, your life will change. You will get some feelings of the Lord in your life, and it will be the most exciting thing you've ever done. And if you, I'll just put this challenge out there. Try this for the next 3 weeks, the things that we talk about while we do this series. Go try to share the gospel. And if you legit can do all that and you say, my life hasn't changed at all, I don't experience the presence of God, schedule a meeting with me. I'd love to hear the story, but I promise you that will not happen. It just won't. If it does, then you're doing it wrong, and I'll show you how to do it, okay? And we will go together. I promise you, if you start sharing the gospel, your life will change, and you will experience the presence of God. Number 2, the second group of people I want to talk to. If you're in here and you're a part of those who are not following Jesus, I want to address you. There are lots of people following Jesus in this room, but for sure there are people in here who aren't. And you might be thinking, great, I finally come to church, I need some hope, I need some help, and yet I'm getting a message on how to share the gospel, something I could care less to do. This message has nothing to do with me. I want to say if that's you, that is not true. This message does have to do with you. In fact, if you find yourself struggling and you were coming here hoping to get some hope from the Lord, I want you to know I was in your shoes 11 years ago when I made that decision to follow Jesus, and I was at that church. When I went, I was an absolute wreck emotionally. I was frustrated. I was doing a lot of things I shouldn't do. And then when I went to that church, when I went to that camp, and all of a sudden, I heard about a God who loved me and died for me and rose again to pay for my sins, to have a relationship with me. And not only that, He had a mission for me. When I got my eyes off myself and my problem, and I looked at the mission He has for me, all of a sudden, the problems I had started to disappear. And I started to love life. And I bet you, for anyone in here who came here wanting hope, I would tell you the same is true for you. If you would just understand this, God created us to be with Him. Our sins have separated us from Him, and our sins, no matter how hard we try, they cannot be removed by good deeds. There's only one way to appease that guilty conscience of yours, and that is Jesus, who paid for our sins on the cross. And now everyone who believes in Jesus and repents, starts following Him, they can have eternal life. And that life starts now, and that's what I'm saying. If you start following Him by sharing the gospel, you will experience some amazing things in your life. If you came in here not following Jesus, this message is for you as well. Believe in Jesus, follow Him, and you can do what we're talking about today because God has a plan for you as well. This equipping message is for everyone. If you're ready to learn the plan and you're ready to learn how to do the plan, say, let's go. All right, here's the plan, okay? Here's the plan to share the gospel. 3 easy steps: prayer, care, and share. That's our plan. 3 easy steps: prayer, care, and share. These steps don't necessarily have to be done in that order, but these are the 3 things that if you're doing these, you can consistently, you can routinely be sharing the gospel with those around you. You can set your sights on an individual, and you can say, I'm going to start praying for them, I'm going to start caring for them, and I'm going to share with them. Or whatever order it is that you want to do. You randomly start talking to them, and boom, the opportunity presents itself to share. I'm going to share for them. Now that I just shared, I'm going to leave, and I'm going to start praying for them daily until I find out the decision that they made, and I'm going to find ways to care for them. We're going to talk more about what that looks like each week. But today, that's the plan. Now today specifically, we're going to cover how to pray for the lost. How to pray for the lost. And I'm going to give you 2 simple tools to use. We're going to do an Oikos map and the Bless Every Home app. Okay? Everyone say Oikos. Oikos. Oikos comes from the Greek word that means house. Many of you might remember there's a story recorded in multiple of the gospel accounts of a man who was demon-possessed. This man was demon-possessed, and he encounters Jesus. Jesus casts the demons out of him. He becomes in his right mind again, and he's so excited. He goes up to Jesus, and he begs him, Jesus, can I please come with you? And he says, no. Go back to your oikos, go back to your home, and tell everyone what great things God has done for you. Hey, church, if you're a follower of Jesus right now, I'd be willing to bet if you've been spending time with Him at all, you probably have the same desire as that man. Jesus, I just want to be with you. I look around at this world and it's so worthless. It's vanity. I just want to be with God. Jesus, please let me be with you. But if you're still alive today, that means Jesus has looked at you and said, no. Go back to your oikos, your home, and tell everyone what great things God has done for you. So we're going to make an oikos map, a tool that helps us identify the people in our lives that we know who don't know Jesus. So you probably received, hopefully, when you came in, you might be sitting on it, you might have crumbled it up, hopefully you didn't, but there's a piece of paper that looks like this. This oikos map. Don't do anything with it right now, just hold it, okay? I'm going to teach you really quickly how to make the oikos map, okay? And I'm going to do it by drawing this board. I think they're going to put me on the screen so that way you can see for those who are a little bit further away. But first, let me teach you, and then you're going to get a chance to make it yourself, okay? So let's start with this, all right? We start with, in the middle, I'm going to put my name, okay? Great handwriting. Boom. All right, there's Preston, all right? Now I'm going to start by thinking of my family. So I'm going to go up here, and because I'm on TV and stuff, I'm not going to say specific names, but for you, when you do this, you would use specific names, okay? So let me just say this. When I think, who in my family do I know who doesn't know Jesus? Well, let's start with family member 1, okay? Family member 1. This guy, by the way, is married to this woman, and I'm just going to, for short, I'm going to put 2, okay? Married to her. By the way, she's got 3 kids. Let's say 3, 4, 5. And by the way, this one, she's married now to this guy. And, oh, by the way, they got 2 kids. So, boom. All right, this girl, she's about to get married, so I want to pray for him as well. And they don't have any kids. This one's not married, but she's got a boy thing. So, boom. And they have 2 kids together. Boom. Okay, I could keep going, but let's just start. Boom, notice how quickly that filled up when I just started thinking of some people in my family. Got one individual who's married to one person, got some kids, they have kids, and they have significant others. And now I just have several people, that's 12 names right there, of people I know who aren't following Jesus. Then, let me move to, how about my friends? Okay, I got a friend in the front row. No, I'm just kidding. Let's say friend 1, okay? Friend 1, okay? Oh, by the way, friend 1 is about to get married soon, so we'll put that there. I also have another friend from high school. And he's not married, but he's got like a boo thing, so boom. And they have 2 kids, actually. So let's say 5 and 6. Again, if I wasn't doing this publicly, I'd write their names out. And I could keep going. And then lastly, let me think of my work. Where do I work? Well, I have this boss who preaches consistently. Just kidding. But anyways, some of you might say, oh, my boss, goodness, they need Jesus, right? And they're married, okay? So we'll put them there, all right? By the way, this coworker I work with, boom. And then this other coworker. And you could just keep filling it out and think of who you know because of them. So you have family, friends, and your work. Those are your main spheres of life. However, you might notice on this sheet of paper we have other things as well, based off the different areas of life you might have or spheres of influence, such as your kid's teacher or maybe a barista if you go every single day, or if you go to McDonald's every day, whoever it is that's working the cash register. Okay? These are different areas, but what you want to do is you want to write them down and make your map. We all know people who don't know Jesus, and this helps you identify who they are. You know, I was just thinking about this. I was making this, and I made it like I normally do. And I guess because it's a praise report, I want to just, this is so cool. And I've heard this from so many people back when my wife and I were doing transformation. We heard this from so many people, but on my list was my dad. I told you earlier that he told me, son, you're my son, not my pastor, quit talking about Jesus. And he never would listen to me. And when I finished with my doctorate 2 years ago, and we went to graduation, my dad came, and Jerry Prevost was doing the commencement speech. And you know what Jerry Prevost did up there while my dad was in the audience? He shared the gospel And he said, hey, if you want to accept Christ, he did his normal thing that many of you remember. He said, if you want to accept Christ, pray with me, whatnot. And then he said, hey, if you made that decision, would you text your son or your daughter here, telling them, I'll see you in heaven? And guess what happened about 2 minutes later? My phone, bzz, bzz, and I have a text from my dad. I'll see you in heaven, son. Isn't that cool? My friend Kendall was on my list. That was my friend. And he's my best friend from high school, which is crazy. Here, people stay in touch with each other after they graduate. In Arizona, Oklahoma, no one talks to each other. But I do have one friend that I still talk to. His name's Kendall. And I prayed for him all the time. He's always like, little homie, I ain't trying to be about that life. Like, all right, Kendall, whatever. Anyways, Kendall got a girl pregnant. They're together. Actually, I have 2 kids now. And on one of my last visits, me and him went to go get breakfast together. And I shared with him again. And you know what he did? He said, I want to accept Jesus, and I want to have what you have. Can we pray together? Guys, when we actually do the things God has called us to do, we see some really cool things happen. Not when we sit there and be too cool for school to participate. I hope that you'll actually fill out these maps and you'll be praying. Now, with that being said, 2 questions might come into your mind. All right, I made this map. I've identified some people in my life. When do I pray? And I would say, guess what? You schedule it. In fact, I would challenge you, please schedule it. If you don't schedule it, it most likely will not happen, okay? My recommendation would be make it to where you pray for each person on your list at least once a week. You might be the person that's super zealous and you say, I'm going to pray for every single name every day. And if you can do that, great. But I'm not even asking for that. I'm asking, would you please just say, you know what? I'm going to pray for everyone on here at least once a week. So something you might do is literally pull out that calendar app on your phone and put on there Mondays, I pray for everyone on my family list. 7 a.m., boom, it's going to go off. Pray for everyone on this list. Wednesdays, it's on the calendar. It's going to pop up 7 a.m. Pray for everyone on my friends list. Friday, it's going to pop up 7 a.m. Everyone on my work list is going to pop up that I know that doesn't know Jesus. And if you would just take the time to do that, I think you would start to see lots of cool things happen. Second question would be, well, what do I pray? This is going to get kind of old, right? Like, what do I pray for? And I think there's multiple commands and example prayers in Scripture that tell us what we could be praying for. Number one, if you're going to pray for these people, I would encourage you to pray, number one, for their salvation. Paul says in Romans 10:1, brothers, my heart's desire and prayer to God for them is that they may be saved. It's his desire and his prayer that these people would be saved. So pray for people to get saved. Secondly, pray for opportunities to share with them. Colossians 4:3, Paul says, at the same time, pray also for us that God may open to us a door for the word to declare the mystery of Christ. Pray for opportunities. Don't just pray for them to get saved. God, please give me an opportunity to share with this individual. Number 3, pray for boldness to take the opportunity. Peter and John were arrested in Acts chapter 4. They were beaten. They were released from prison. And they then prayed, and now, Lord, look upon their threats. Grant to your servants to continue to speak your word with all boldness. So yes, we want to pray for them to be saved. We want to pray for the opportunity. And then we know our hearts are fickle, so we say, God, please give me the boldness when I see that opportunity to take it. And lastly, I would encourage you to pray for more workers, for more people to share the gospel with them as well. Jesus was talking about how many people need to be saved in Matthew 38, and he says, 9:38, he says, the harvest is plentiful. There are so many people that need to be saved. He says, but the laborers are few. Therefore, pray earnestly to the Lord of the harvest to send out laborers into his harvest. This is Jesus commanding you to pray this. So literally, God, I want to share with so-and-so, but I pray that you'd bring other people into their life to share the gospel with them as well. God, I pray that I am just one of many sharing the gospel. And I pray that their next door neighbor would move out and it'd be some annoying, pestering Christian that shares the gospel every day with them. God, I pray that one person would quit at their job, another person would come in who's a Christian who shares with them every single week. God, send more workers into their life who's going to share the gospel with them. I would encourage you to pray these 4 things when you're praying for those on your map. So that's the Oikos map. And by the way, we as a church, moving forward, every week in our announcement block, we're going to take time to pray over our maps. So I hope that you'll make that and you'll join us in praying for them. Secondly, the Bless Every Home app. We're not going to go over it now because it takes a few minutes to set up. But you saw it in the video. This is an awesome app that allows you to know who your neighbors are and keep track of what you've done with them. Right off the bat, when you do this, if you scan that QR code, it'll take you to our website, and you can click the link to download the app, or you can just go to our website, as the bumper video said, and it'll navigate you. You can navigate to that page and get the app. But what's really cool about it is once you put your address in there and all that stuff, boom, it automatically assigns you 40 of your closest neighbors. And what you can do then, every day it will send you 5 people to pray for. 5 people to pray for. I think all of us could do that. Could you lift up 5 names in prayer a day? Surely you can. But you can also track whatever else you do with them as well. You can track if you've had a meal with them. You can track if you've tried to have a conversation and listen to them. You can track if you've shared the gospel with them. But this is just an amazing tool that allows you to be intentional with your community that God has placed you in, your oikos, your home. So I hope that you will do that every week of this series. We're going to have that QR code up. You can go on our website at any point and download it and set it up. I hope that you'll do that as you leave today. Well, we're going to go into prayer time as a church together right now. And so I'd like to invite the worship team. They can come out. And church, what I want you to think about at the very beginning of this series is this. God does not desire any to go to hell. He doesn't desire that any perish. He doesn't delight in the death of the wicked, 2 Peter 3:9. And God desires all people to be saved, 1 Timothy chapter 2, verse 5. Does everyone agree with those two statements? Yes? Okay, then here's another question. If we're his followers, shouldn't our hearts match God's? Shouldn't we have the same level of concern for the lost as God does? How can we say we're his followers if we kind of, I'm not doing that. I'm not going to pray for the lost. I'm not going to share. I got too much going on in my life. How could that be our heart? If we're following the God who says, I don't delight in anyone dying and going to hell. I want everyone to be saved. If you are a Jesus follower in this room, then you care about the salvation of the lost. And I'm begging you this morning to start taking steps to care. If you're saying, I hear you and I know that I should care, but my heart just doesn't. You know what you should do then? Pray. You know why my heart wasn't excited whenever my daughter said that in the mall? Because I didn't pray for an opportunity that morning, so when it came, I didn't pay attention to it. I bet you if I would have prayed that morning, God, please give me an opportunity, you know what I would have noticed in there? Whoa, ding, 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 here's my chance. Hey, on second thought, and I would have probably shared. You know why I didn't care to share the gospel with that guy at New Vision, the bank? Because I didn't pray that morning for a chance to share with the lost. So when the opportunity came, guess what didn't go off in my head? Opportunity. But I bet you that would have changed had I been praying for it. I bet you for you in here, if you would start praying for opportunities, you would start praying for the lost, whether you feel it right now or not, your heart will change. And you know what? We need to be a church that cares for the lost. It's one of our core values. We care about the one over the 99. The 99 is great, but we care about the one just like God did. We want to pursue the lost, the one who's straying. We're going to go pursue them. And you know what, church? The truth is, the reality is, people are going to go to hell. We know the end of the story. Lots of people will. But if they have to go to hell, may it not be because we did not beg them not to go there. May it not be because we didn't pray earnestly for them every single day. In fact, I would hope that our prayer, our heart would be that of Charles Spurgeon. Listen to this quote. He says, if sinners be damned, at least let them leap into hell over our dead bodies. And if they perish, let them perish with their arms wrapped about their knees, imploring them to stay. If hell must be filled, let it be filled in the teeth of our exertions, and let no one go unwarned and unprayed for. Church, people are going to go to hell, but may it not be said that Mountain City Church did not try to do something about it. May it be said every single person in this room said, I'm going to get on my knees, I'm praying, and I'm begging God, please do something in their life to save them. I don't want my dad to go to hell. I don't want my stepmom to go to hell. I don't want my stepsisters. I don't want my friend. I don't want you fill in the blank with who you know. God, save them. God, I have opportunities and I keep missing it. Strengthen my heart to stop being so weak-minded and make me brave to share. You've given me the opportunity. Let me do it. And then let's share. And let's see what God would do. Church, if you're a Christian, you are called to share the gospel, not to cower down and live a moral life and try not to get in trouble. No, let's get in trouble because we share the gospel of Jesus. Let's get in trouble because we beg every single person to get saved. And if they're going to go to hell, they went to hell and their ears hurt from hearing the gospel so much from us. Church, please stand to your feet and let's apply this message right now. Let's get on our knees down front and pray over our Oikos maps. Let's do it together. Please join me down front.